Well, evening, fellas. It's good to have you here.
Evening, James.
We're taking a chance to reminisce about the Year 14 sportsmen. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown, we won't get a chance to actually see them face to face to say, thanks for the great memories that we as staff have had. So we're going to start the journey with this photograph, and in a minute, Mr. McQuillan or James, the Rock, is going to let us know about it. But I suppose the first question is, that's an impressive beard you had back then. You'd obviously been working at it.
I think that was about 2 weeks growth there. So but no, it comes and goes. It comes and goes.
Yeah. Well, I could do with some of that on my head at the moment. But so, I mean, you look at that group of boys there. When was that? And give us a backstory on it.
That was the annual Brian Oaks tournament. So it was, and we actually took 2 teams with us that year. That was my year group, and Mr. McLaughlin had his year group down as well. And the 2 teams both ended up playing each other in the final. And when you look back on it now, the amalgamation of those 2 groups really was this year's McLarnon team, and there's still plenty of them left over for next year's McLarnon team as well. But no, I just remember it being a really, really hot day. Sun was splitting the sky, But no, that was a group of players really that were only starting out on the journey that led to, I suppose, them being involved with the marquee team last year. One of them, they were involved in the Cahardura team that got to the McLaren final last year, and then they were part of the school team this year that competed again at McLaren level. So you have Judo at the back there, Matthew Stevenson, who ended up being goalkeeper in the marquee team last year. Michael Moore, far right, member of the panels both years. Down at the bottom, you have Shane Michael Honey with a trophy there in front of him. Michael Lynch beside him. Ian Cutler, bottom right. So that was a group that was coming through, and as I say, starting out in their journey there, really. I suppose that was a sign of things to come with the silverware, that they were going to be a part of that group then that won the marquee last year. But you could tell straight away with some of those boys that they were really, really talented enough. They stuck at it, and they were led in the right direction. The likes of Shane and Jude and Michael Lynch, Michael Moore and Ian Cutloff, were all going to be really, really good footballers who would bring a lot to the school. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it's a tournament I love, obviously. The Brian Oaks, it's one I help organise with the family, and obviously taught Brian at St. Bridget's and then St. Collins. But that was an intriguing year, James is right, because it was the year 10s versus the year 9s in the final. And the 9s had just won the Corncolumn Kill, and it was so exciting watching them playing against each other, because although they were from the same school, they didn't give an inch. And I think that sums them up too. They're a very competitive bunch. They are actually winners. They're all winners, and thankfully that proved to be. But I think probably the other significant thing there, James, is that you and I were doing battle on the sideline, because one team was yours and the other was mine. And little did we know, because obviously Mr. Burns and Mr. Trainer always took the sort of senior end of the school. Little did you and I know that we'd end up, given the events around Mr. Burns, that you and I would end up then involved taking the senior team when we won the marquee. So I guess when you look back at it now and think about it, there was a bit of destiny and a bit of future was being written 3 or 4 years prior to us winning the Marquee Cup. So it's actually a lovely picture to look back on. It's really good.
And obviously there's issues with McElhenney's socks and boots, but it looks fairly normal there.
We probably spent about 15 minutes in the changing room just to make sure they were just right, just for the photo. There was one day he got in a recent interview with Mr. McLaughlin there, where he called me a poser because I was always at him for posing with the socks. There was one day we were playing up in Cookstown, and I think it was when they were 4th year, the year they got to the final. It was a group stage game, and I'm standing talking to them all anyway, and I noticed him over at the side, as was his wont, and we kind of drifted away with because he was grand, he didn't need to listen to it. But there he was, sitting down, getting these socks rolled into perfection, and he must have been funning at them 4 or 5 times. And I lost the rag with him. I would look back on it now and laugh, but it's just, oh my God. But a brilliant footballer. Brilliant footballer.
It's obviously moving on through the ages, and Michael, you'll know more about this group, so give us the background on this one.
Yeah, this was quite an impressive year, James, because this group hadn't actually made, or as Shane McLaughlin said, he had no recollection of making it out of group stages playing Ulster Colleges football. And this was the first year they came out. So it's the year after they won the Brian Oaks. It's 4th year. And again, funny, Mr. McQuillan, another scorcher of a day playing Kilkeel. And it was the beginning of the amalgamation of the year group below, and obviously Mr. McQuillan's own year group. So we knew, looking on paper, absolutely on paper, fantastic group of guys. But significantly for me, if you listen to Shane McLaughlин's interview, it was actually their first big final, so it was huge for them. So I never thought about them maybe being nervous, or if the tide started turning, what might happen, because Mr. McQuillan will tell you, we started unbelievably well that day, and when you start well, you kind of think, this is our day. But the tide turned a wee bit on us. But I'll let James obviously pick up on that, and there's obviously a significant individual in there as well that James will speak about. But this really was the beginning of that journey towards that Marquee Cup. We wouldn't have said it at the time, but this was a significant day because they lost that final. It really hurt the boys badly, because when you're there, you want to win. And Shane McLaughlin put the thumb on it when he said, I wasn't for losing that Marquee Cup final when I got there. So this is a very significant picture, but I'll let Mr. McQuillan pick it up from there.
As Michael said there, in a way, we kind of got to the final that year, and it wasn't really expected. I remember we beat Cross McLean in a semi-final in Garvahe. It was an absolutely brilliant match. It was the best performance the boys put on that whole year. And to be, as you said, looking their first Ulster final was a massive, massive experience for them. And, they didn't let themselves down that day at all either. Ultimately, they were beaten by the better team of the day. Kilkeel had some brilliant footballers. But we missed a serious amount of goal chances in the first half. I remember, Jude Ogan and Cara McMonigal and Shea Brown really cutting them in the shreds and creating so many goal chances that we just didn't take, and their keeper made saves. That's the way it goes. But whenever I look at that photo, so many boys there were involved in that marquee success. And again, you have Jude Ogan, you have Cara McMonigal, who that was really his first proper year playing Gaelic football for the school, and what a Gaelic footballer it turned out to be. I would say, for me anyway, on a par, I played football with Marty Donaghy at school, and in terms of skill level, Cahir's right up there, man. There's no doubt about that. You can also see a lot of lads there who are maybe wearing shirt numbers with the larger numbers. They were subs that day. I see Keelan O'Kane there with number 30 on, and I mean, Keelan O'Kane was a boy who made unbelievable progress as a footballer in his time with us at the school. He was one of our best players this year at wing half back. Tiernan O'Connor's there beside him as well. What a footballer he's turning out to be. So there's so many. If I named them all, we'd be here all day. But there's so many of them there involved in that Marquee panel, and the MacLarnon panel with the Cahardura team last year, and then the MacLarnon panel with the school this year. And I think you alluded to Shane saying that they were never for losing that Marquee final. That experience there against Kilkeel obviously stood those boys in good stead, and it will even going further on down their careers. They weren't going into that Marquee final with any nerves, because so many of them already had big game experience. I mean, I can't think of one player in that team that day who really didn't have any big game experience, whether it was through the school, their club, or their at the county level, like Fergal Mortimer. But as you mentioned there's another significant individual within that picture, and that's Oren up in the back row there on the left hand side, Oren Boyd, who unfortunately passed away this year. And just an absolute gentle giant, and was always at training, did everything that was asked of him, was more than willing to help me out with things that I needed on the day of games, even on the sideline during friendlies and stuff. He would help me out. And he was a brilliant club man as well for Slap Manus. I know that. He gave up a lot of his time coaching and volunteering, and he was very popular amongst the kids up in Slapmanis. And he was obviously at the forefront of our minds this year during the MacLarnon campaign. And I remember just after he passed, we played Coleraine. I was very conscious of the fact that a lot of the boys were obviously very, very close to him, and whether they would want to play that game or not. But it shows the strength of character that they wanted to play that game. Not one of them said to me, "Oh no, I don't fancy playing." Every single one of them wanted to. And actually, I remember on a personal, we were that day against Coleraine and MacLarnon this year. We came from 9 points behind. I think it was 9 points, wasn't it, Michael?
Yeah, we were 9 down. That's correct. Yeah.
And we went a point ahead, and they came up the pitch on a breakaway and got a penalty. And I just remember whenever the boys hit the penalty, I looked up the sky, I thought, come on, we're making miss it. And the boy missed it. And, you know, at the end of the match, we were all in a huddle in the middle of Celtic Park, and every single boy said that one was roaring today because it was so soon after he died, you know. And he'll always be at the forefront of our minds, just as a collective, as a year group in particular. You know, we miss him very, very much. But he was a great lad, and it was great to have him part of the Gaelic panels when he was with us.
And obviously, you mentioned there about the year group. You being a year head and coaching them, you know, how did you feel as a year head seeing that group progress to something like that? And obviously, it is a big positive that they've got there, and you've seen the hard work that they've put in, but to not get the outcome that they hoped for, how did that feel for you as their year head?
You know, you take immense pride in the fact that, you know, you're their year head and you're also, you know, coaching them. And I think it's a big help. You know, it does help because you're going on the training sessions and you're going on the games, and you know what boys are dealing with in school, outside of school. So it gives you a better reading of what you can get out of them or what you can demand of them, you know. And in terms of the boys themselves, they were always extremely respectful. I mean, not just because I'm the year head, you know, I've said this lots and lots of times to anybody who listens. You could take our boys anywhere out of school and they'll never ever let you down. Never let you down. And my year group were, you know, we're like that, and it's the same for all the other year groups too, to be frank about it. So no, immensely proud of them, and it was, you know, it was just another added bonus to the fact that I was coaching them, and they were, you know, they were achieving great success on the field as well. But no, those boys would have done anything you asked of them, you know. And I've said this lots of times before as well. I've actually put it up on the school sports Facebook page that when I look at that group of boys there, those boys achieve not only in the extracurricular front, but they also achieve in the curricular front as well, because of the discipline that the sport gives them in terms of their own time management and that drive to succeed and be the best they can. You know, Porrick Neelis is in that picture, for example. He's our current head boy. Tom Burns, who is our outgoing head boy, would also have been involved in Gaelic football panels and hurling panels in the school, but he had a lot of injury problems with his back and stuff. So all those boys in that photo, Donica Gilmore there as deputy head boy, a lot of those lads are very, very successful in their whole school life, not just in the Gaelic football pitch, you know.
And speaking of success, tell us more about this picture then.
This is, I found out the other night after watching Shane's interview that he's now called the Heartbreak Kid. This is Kieran Kincannon. And Kieran was very, very dedicated, never missed training. Really, really quick. Really, you know, he brought a lot to the table. But that was a very competitive squad that year. There were a lot of boys sitting on the bench who would have normally got on in other years, but we just had such a good group. And because he was so pacey, things were starting to open up a wee bit in the second half of that game. And so we fired him in. And he literally wasn't on the pitch 1 minute until he followed in a shot. I think it was from his clubmate, Cormac Mooney. And it dropped short and kind of hit the joint almost between the bar and the post, if I remember. But he had the alertness to follow it on, where his man didn't. And it dropped in, and he buried it low and hard into the bottom corner. And once we got that goal, to be perfectly honest, I knew we weren't going to lose that match after that. You know, so that was the turning point. And it was brilliant for him on a personal note too, I would say, because he hadn't got a while out of game time that year. But he got the most important score of the year, and
like
a great
Origi.
lad.
Like Origi.
Like the Steelstown Divock Origi, But I coached Kieran's big brother, Owen, as well. Owen was a superb footballer, went on to represent there at county level, minor and under 21 senior. But Kieran was a great lad. He was a bit of, always up for a bit of a laugh, definitely. He was always at the centre of the crack that was going on up the back of the bus. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I remember that moment, James. Just before it, both of us spoke to each other on the sideline, and we did say it's time to roll the dice now. And we saw what he did against Milford, funny, in the quarter-final. We brought him on when we were in a wee bit of basically the scoreboard had stopped turning. And he came on and he started just causing trouble, just making a nuisance of himself. But they come on and to be so alert coming off the bench, to catch that ball and to be so cool, sliding it onto the keeper. Any wonder he's called the Heartbreak Kid. That was a heartbreaking moment. And also what I like about this picture is this is just after he scores the goal. Look at the concentration on his face again. He's ready for the kick out. Most players, once they score the goal in the final, they're, your head's gone. You're looking into the crowd, and you look at the background in that picture. I mean, there was a huge crowd there that day from the Abbey, and significantly all our GA cohort were out as well. And that game has inspired so many of the junior boys. They talk about it, and they'll talk about it forever. Because anytime I'm out now with teams, I'll reference the fact that these guys were 7 points down in the first half, and they showed a bit of grit and determination not to be beat. Because that's the way schools football is. You don't go down by 2. You always go down by 6, 7, 8, 9, and you have to figure out the way back. So, no, I mean, listen, it was just pure euphoria. It was really, really good.
So then, we as staff talk about college boys and what makes up a college boy. James, you're a college boy. Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. McGonigal there, was your form tutor. Now you know him as a friend. Expand on that for us. How does it work from being a college boy to a member of staff? You're in a final, you've come through, and now you're setting your own legacy with these boys that are in your year group. How do you explain that photograph, though?
Well, in terms of what happened, I just remember it was we went, I think, maybe about 3-4 points up, and it was an injury time, and knew the game was up, and I just turned, and I was just elated myself. You know what I mean? And he's very handsome with his beard there. You have to say that, but he's just the first person there, and I just grabbed him and kissed him in the face. Are you worried? But he looks like he's enjoying it anyway. But, no, the only thing I would say about that photo is there was an awful lot of people helped us out that year too, the sideline and stuff, especially as we went towards the latter stages of the tournament. And Tony was doing stats for us that day, and those stats were vital in terms of showing boys where the improvement needed to be made. But what I liked about them too was to show boys at halftime, not here's what you need to improve on, here's what you're doing really, really well. And what we alluded from those stats that day was that we were murdering them in kickouts, and we've been really dominating teams in kickouts all year that year because of the way we had set up and practiced off. But I'm dropping a wee bit anyway. But I just want to put it out there. We're really grateful to everybody who helped out that year. Like Tony, Bren Trainer, who's retired, but comes to every single game and he loves it. And Noel Fun helped out that year. Blaine Glass helped out one of the semi-final game actually. So there's lots of people who, it as a collective, this obviously from working in school and working with sports teams. It's not just about one person taking a team and that's it. Especially as you go up the school towards the later year groups, it's a collective effort. You couldn't do it, you just couldn't.
Yeah. Well, me and Mr. Stevenson were chasing the bus not long before that, so we'd missed the supporters bus. So.
Remember? But not in terms of what it means as a college boy. I played football right from first year right up to upper second school, and was lucky enough to play in 2 MacLarnon finals in lower second when I was in upper second. Unfortunate, we didn't win either of them. But that was a really amazing period for the school at that time. I mean, they got the 3 MacLarnon finals in a row, and they eventually won it in 2002, and then they got the another one in 2004. But when you're a college boy, in my opinion, in my experience, you're once a college boy, always a college boy. Simple as that, And that there, probably winning that meant just as much, if probably not more, than what winning one of those 2 finals in 2000 and 2001 would have meant, because far more effort, again, you'll know this and Michael will know this, far more effort goes on the coaching a team than playing in a team. Far more. You leave games and you're absolutely exhausted because of the emotional drain,
Yeah.
You do be absolutely knackered. But, as you said as well, Tony was my form tutor in 4th and 5th year, and, there's teachers that do a hell of a lot for you as a young fella growing up and, taking the wrong steps here and there, shall we say, and putting you back on the right track. And it's just something that I'm very conscious of, that I want to be able to do now for young fellas. The school did so much for me on the sporting front and on the cricketer front when I was a young fella, and it still does a lot for me now as an adult. And you just want to keep passing that on. It's a really strong tradition in St. Colum's, past pupils coming back and teaching in the school. And also, obviously, Tony played football throughout his time in school, and he's heavily involved in the coaching as well. So, being a college boy means something. And as a yearhead too, with my year group, it's something I'm always very, pushing with the boys that, it really means something. Never forget the school. Never forget the school, because it does a lot for you.
And it obviously does mean something. And there's your 2 of you there, and that picture sums it up well. What's going through your heads at that point? You've added to the legacy that is St. Colum's and the college boy. What are your thoughts?
I'm thinking I'm really jealous I didn't get a kiss from James. Yeah, I was actually on the far side of the pitch when that romantic moment happened, always buzzing around like a hare out of a rabbit hole. Listen, the 2 big cheesy smiles, and we're looking up into the stand, O'Donnell Park there, and it's just, it's, the picture says it all. It's just total happiness. Because James, as he's saying there, when you're coaching, you're never doing it for yourself. Never. When you're teaching the college, you're not doing it for yourself. You always want to get boys up to the top of the mountain, and basically that's what that image is. We're standing down there looking up, going, these boys really thoroughly deserved it, because although tons of work goes into the coaching and the planning, the boys' legs have to turn and their hearts have to beat and their heads have to think. And when they went up them steps, and Fergal Mortimer was trying to give a speech, and you could see Mr. Burns back up there, Mr. Madden was there, Mr. Johnson was there, obviously James, you were up there, Mr. Stevenson, and as Mr. McQuillan alluded to there, all these people pushed this on, and what you're looking at is just total elation. And elation from the point of view as well, because particularly with the GAA, it's a fight every year to really compete at these types of levels. And when you achieve something like this, it's just it's just a big, we made it. All those hours spent after school are always worth it, but they're even more worth it when you see a cup going up into there, So, yeah, that was a great moment. And it was about 5 minutes later. So the first day I didn't bring a change of clothes to a match, and I arrived in the change room late. Mr. McQuillan was already soaked from head to toe in water, and the change room was deathly quiet. I just done a couple of interviews or whatever, and I was thinking, this is really strange. We've just won a cup. The boys don't even know how to celebrate. They're not used to it. As soon as I opened the door, man, it was like getting hit with a tsunami. Absolutely belted me with water. And I was sitting on the bus, absolutely drenched from head to toe, but loving it. Absolutely loved it. I would do it all again as well, But yeah, I'll let James talk about his emotions and that.
Look, it was just, as I already said, the picture of myself and Tony there, it was just pure elation, pure joy, and immense satisfaction. And as you said, we're standing there looking up at the boys and just so happy for them, because they had put on a serious amount of work that year for the school team and for the Cahardura team, and it was fully deserved. And to see, in particular, Fergal Mortimer, who had given his all in every single year, right throughout the school, first year right up to upper sixth, to be rewarded as a winning captain. I mean, that was the first time the school had won an Ulster senior title since 2002. It was massive. It really was massive. It was a real monkey off the back of the school. And they do it as well in front of all the younger boys, as you said already, Michael, so that they could aspire to something. And, you know, I remember Fergal was a team that I took a while back that involved Owen Kincannon and Fergal's big brother, Sean. They were fourth years and they were beat by Ballygolly in the final at Maherfell. And Fergal played in that team as a corner forward. He was only a second year. And he was brilliant. He was actually probably our best player that night in the final, you know. So the talent was always there, and then just to see that talent rewarded with silverware, you know, and that him having that moment of being in a very, very elite group of senior one captains for Gaelic football in St. Colum's College, you know, it's something that if I know he'll look back on, he'll be immensely proud of it, but you know, he definitely should be, because there's not many who have done it.
And we get to see the boys on the training pitch, and we get to see them around the corridors, and you know, this picture here, although it's full of staff, and this might sound a bit crazy, it's about seeing those boys giving it their absolute all. And we might not always have the outcomes that we want, like the final that you have already talked about, but there was a day where everything that our college boys put in, we get to stand back and just enjoy, slightly endure, but also enjoy. You know, what does that picture there say to you about what the boys are giving us as staff?
There's no group that I've ever taken that I could say ever give up. You know, that is one thing about our boys. They will never ever give up. I mean, we spoke earlier on about that fourth year final where they were beaten by Kilkeel. And even though they were maybe 7-8 points down with maybe 5-10 minutes, they did not stop. They were coming forward in their drills, trying to get the goal. That didn't come. But I mean, throughout that year, those boys never gave up. I remember in the very first match against Korea in the group stage, we were in serious stuff. So about 20 minutes on, you know, they were coming at us left, right, and centre. And second half performance completely turned it around. And we won, you know, we were convincing winners in the end up. I remember the quarter final against Milford. That was one of the most physical games of schools Gaelic football I've ever seen as a player or a coach, you know. And boys were targeted. Fergal himself was targeted. There's no two ways. There's no other way of putting it. He was targeted. But every single time he got back up. One of my favourite memories from taking any team in the school, really, in any year, was a point he scored at the very end against Milford. It was a wonder point. And after the abuse that he had taken for the full, you know, hour, for him to come up with a score like that at the very end just was the icing on the cake. And then even in the semi-final, we were coasting in the first 20-25 minutes. I thought we were going to win here by a cricket score. And then just, I don't know what happened. You can't explain it. You know, they came back at us, and Carrick actually went a couple of points up. Maybe only about 7-8 minutes left. But again, the boys, you could almost sense them kind of looking around and going, what are we at here? How have we let this happen? And it just clicked again, and they must have scored about 5-6 points in the trap then after that, you know, in the last 5 minutes. So it says all about those boys, you know. Our lads will never, ever give up. You know, the boys who play Gaelic football, I haven't had any experience taking any other sports in school. What I can say for the Gaelic football boys is that their attitude is always exemplary, and they will always do anything if you ask of them. That's one of my favourite photos there, but because all the coaches are there involved, you know, all the coaches who would take Gaelic football in the school are there as well. And, you know, that was just as much a victory for them as what it was, you know, for me and Michael taking that team, you know, because they put on just as much time and effort, you know. I know, like I teach history. It's not easy running down for your room at 3:30 and getting ready and having a session plan in your head and putting it out in the 3G pits and then getting it all done before 4:30. You know, so and you're doing that 2-3 days a week. A lot of people think that, you know, getting out for matches is a wee day out. Not at all. You know, not at all. There's organising pitches, there's organising refs, there's organising the boys, there's organising cover work. The list goes on. And that was a victory for everybody really who takes teams in the school, and the GA teams in particular, you know, and having him in there as well during his illness was really, really something special too.
And you know, it leads to this here. You look at the pride on all of those college boy faces there, and the word legacy has been mentioned before, and now I get to refer to it with my own son, who's now in first year. You explain what that picture there means.
Michael, do you want to go first through this thing?
Yeah. Again, pictures paint 1,000 words. The shoulders are strong and high. The chins are up. The smiles are there. It's just, you know, they realised their potential. You know, it took them 5 years, yeah, but they realised their potential. They realised what they're capable of doing. And you're right, James. They've left a legacy. It's on. You can see the board behind me here. Their name's on the board. You know, it's on the captain's board. That team's there. You can see all the pictures on the wall behind us and PE and stuff like that. So I listen. I just look at that and I see high shoulders, chest out, big smiles. I just see boys who are leaving school with an experience that they'll never forget. And I suppose it you know, one question I would have for Mr. McQuillan is, I wonder, as their head of year, did he leave them with a particular taste in music as well? Because this particular group of boys had a very strange collection of music on their wee boom boxes and stuff. So myself and James would be in the front of the buses coming home or going to matches thinking, what? Why can't they're listening to Adele and stuff like this, you know? So I'd have that question for Mr. McQuillan as time cuts down this here. Did you influence their music choices?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. My God, it's brutal. It really, really is. You hear them sometimes saying they're getting signed out to go place, and they're going to concerts, and you're asking who they're going to see. You just kind of shake your head and think, what the young fellas listening these days? I remember going to the All-Ireland semi-final when we were playing Octorard in Galway, down in Ballyshannon, and the All-Ireland semi-final, like, it was the first time any of those, most of those boys were involved in the All-Ireland semi-final, and for some it'll be the last time. You know, you're thinking, right, let's get really up for this. And we hadn't even pulled out of the gates of the school, and they had the big speaker on, and they were playing Lewis Capaldi. You know, about being, you know, dumped by your girlfriend and being all sad about it. Wise up. After the shot stop, I went up and changed music and stuck on and watched the Story Morning Glory to try and get them to wake up with me.
Which brings me to another story. Obviously, myself and James joined them the night they won the Marquee Cup, just to mark the victory with them. So as we were leaving them alone, then they do their own wee thing. We were coming across the town. We just gone to get something to eat, and we were going to cross the town. And as we were walking past a particular establishment, we could hear the Backstreet Boys being belted out. And myself and James, and you were there as well, Mr. Green, we all kind of looked at each other and thought, we've heard this song a few times before on a bus. So we thought, let's just go in here and have a wee look. And there they were, all 30 of them. Nobody else in the place but them, mics in hand, blasting out the Backstreet Boys. We walked in, we spotted them. They turned and looked. We joined them. We did join them for about 45 seconds, and we beeline back out again. But that sums them up. You know, they're their own unique brand of boys, and that's testament as well. James's, as we say in Derry, James is good rearing. They reared that year group really well. And listen, they were just magic. Every experience with them was just magic.
We knew the words to it, by the way, as well, Michael.
We did.
Brilliant, fellas, brilliant. That's a good memory, actually. Yeah, it was worth tagging along for that night. That's for sure. That's your legacy, Mr. McQuillan. That's your legacy.
One of my memories from that night actually was Mr. McGonigal was with us as well, and he was on his phone, and Shea Brown peered over his shoulder and shouted, "Look, boys, McGonigal's texting his mad to see if he's allowed to stay out any longer." Oh, please, that was a magic night too. You know, obviously we got offside before it got rowdy. You know, but you could go out for those boys and celebrate for a couple of hours with them. You know, there's no nonsense, and they're just an absolutely super bunch of boys. You know, a pleasure.
Yeah, and funny you say there, James, about Shea. Kieran Kincannon's dad was out that night as well, and I remember him coming over to us, and just, you know, I thought, oh no, here we go, he's going to ask us why the son was on the bench for so long after scoring a wonder goal, but he came over with so much joy and thanks, and listen, thanks so much for what you guys have done for them, and these boys are great, and it's nice to hear that, you know, from parents, because you do forget how much impact this stuff has on a home life as well, you know. That, you know, parents see their boys buzzing and happy from the experiences, the whole holistic approach that they get from St. Columns, you know, and that was a big thing for me as well. But listen, you know, before we go, I'm going to give them a big shout out. I'm going to wish them all the best. I know we'll meet again, we'll have conversations again, but they give me, you know, particularly last year, a brilliant time in Gaelic football. So it'll be hard to replicate it, but I know we'll do it again. But thanks to the boys for that.
And from yourself, James, just a few last words about the sports boys from your year group.
Oh no, look, you know, just an absolutely brilliant bunch of fellas. You know, Judo, Shane, you know, just Michael Moore. So many of them, as I say, could list them all off. It would take a long time. But anything I've ever asked of them, they've done it. They've never ever let me down. That's the biggest compliment that I can pay them. They've never ever let me, themselves, the school, their parents, anything down. You can take them anywhere. And you know, we haven't obviously had a normal end to the year, which is unfortunate. But I know for a fact that we will meet up with them all whenever all this calms down and everybody's healthy, and we'll reflect on all the great moments that they had in their sports career and the school, and we'll have another good night out, and so we'll learn more Backstreet Boys songs for the occasion.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, fellas. We'll speak soon.
See you, man.
All right.